All right. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Now I guess we do need to wait. We are 1 minute early. We're excited.
Better early than late, right?
Rather sooner than later.
Yeah. And now we're at 11.
Great. Okay, hello everyone. Warm welcome to this webinar and hello from Stockholm, Sweden if you're joining us from elsewhere. We're going to give it another few seconds just to let people stream in.
How has your morning been so far, Michaela?
Great. What about yours?
Yeah, a bit stressful to be honest. Forgot the camera back at home, had to go back and get it. So not a great start, but now I'm very pumped for this webinar.
And exercise, because we bike back and forth from the office.
That's true. It was also a pleasant surprise seeing that we accidentally matched. So quite nice start to the morning anyways.
Good. I think ready, set, CSRD.
Yes, let's go. Hi everyone, my name is Maria Svantemark. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SustainLab. And with me today, I also have my colleague, Michaela Quesada. She's our Chief Sustainability Officer. And just very, very shortly about SustainLab, that's not the focus today, but SustainLab is a SaaS sustainability management platform that helps companies to automate their sustainability data handling. So we gather, process, analyze, and visualize all of the sustainability data you need, for example, for CSRD. And our aim is to have you spend less time on reporting and more on actually accelerating change. And today's topic, which is what we're going to focus about, is Ready, Set, Report, Mastering CSRD Readiness with Confidence. So we're going to start with a short introduction about CSRD. Most people by now knows a fair bit about CSRD, so we're going to keep that very short. And then we're going to deep dive into how to get ready to report on CSRD. First with why you need to conduct the gap analysis and how you do it, but also what's next after you have conducted a gap analysis. There are 3 buttons in your bottom right corner, which says polls, questions, and chat. We won't have a poll today, but if you have any questions, please post them in there, and we'll take them up in the end when we have a Q&A. And if there's anything else that you want or that you need, just post that in the chat, and we'll come back to you. And now let's start. So Michaela, maybe you can start. You and your team have spent the last 9 months or so to make SustainLab ready for CSRD, so we can help our customers to get ready for CSRD. Can't you tell a bit about that?
Yes, thanks, Maria. The team and I have really been in the deep of CSRD, mainly in our waking hours, but sometimes in our sleep, if I'm honest. So we went through the whole legislation, mandatory and topical areas, and mapped basically all required content to how it can be collected to SustainLab. But in that process, we realized that we have another way of how we can help companies today and prepare for CSRD reporting, which is what we'll talk about more now and as a step that you can take today. Personally, I was also invited to an expert roundtable where I learned peer-to-peer learnings myself that were valuable, and I also presented on the mandatory E1 climate change, because that's strongly tied to what I worked with previously. So an interesting fact on E1 is that it actually is estimated the most expensive topic for CSRD reporting. The EFRAG have estimated that it costs approximately 30% to do E1 reporting of the whole estimation of how much it should cost. But anyway, let's jump into a quick overview of CSRD. In a nutshell, CSRD is a law that mandates in the EU that companies are compliant with ESRS when it comes to reporting on environmental, social, and governance data. We know it will enter into force stepwise, so large companies will have to do this first. And we know it covers 12 sustainability topics covering from climate change, biodiversity, and business conduct. In this slide, we can see that actually the pink ones are the mandatory topics. So we have general disclosures, climate change, and own workers. And the topical areas are the ones in the previous slide that need to be done through the double materiality assessment. And double materiality recognizes that a company's financial performance is inevitably interlinked with its environmental and social performance. So it covers 2 areas, the impact materiality and the financial materiality. And it's important to say that these can be actual or potential material. These can be positive and negative, and these can be now or in the long run. So CSRD does require understanding some tough nuts, and these are some examples. It's covering Scope 3 emissions. It is important to do a scenario analysis, and it's important to have third-party assurance. And all of this is nothing that hasn't been done or cannot be done, but it just requires a lot of collaboration through your value chain and including key stakeholders, and some time and patience and work. So at the end of the day, CSRD is not just a legislation. It's more than just about reporting data and having evidence and doing the double materiality. It requires you to set up an alignment, processes, and policies, which we'll come back to throughout this webinar. What we want to cover now, because it does sound like a lot, and we will expand on some actions, but there are many actions that we've posted in our blog post last week on CSRD Guide that you can look into. Maybe we can post the link in the chat as well and send it later, because we won't be able to cover everything in this short webinar. But what we will cover today is how you can get started, and basically leveraging on what you have and what you need. And I think I've talked a lot. So maybe, Maria, what's the readiness level out there?
Well, that's also one thing that we have deep dive into. How ready are companies to report on CSRD? And one study about 50 of the largest companies in Europe showed that only 2% were close to ready to report on CSRD. So quite a significant gap there. But we also know that companies aren't utilizing the tools that are out there. So when it comes to digitalization, 96% of global decision makers says that digitalization is essential to sustainability. And for sure, this is also true when it comes to CSRD, which is more data heavy than before, so technology can help even more. But still, only 35% of companies have implemented some form of digitalization that supports their sustainability transition. So which areas is it we're not ready in then? Well, that's another study that looked into that showed that the areas where companies need to put significant attention is firstly the double materiality assessment. This is no surprise. Double materiality assessment is new in the form it is in CSRD, so for sure, not a lot of companies have done this before. If you've done a normal materiality assessment, or how we have used to do it the last years, you are on your way, but there's still things you need to do to make sure that you conduct a double materiality assessment according to CSRD. So that's one gap that was not surprising to us. What was a bit more surprising, seeing all of these targets that companies like to communicate, is that actually target setting, but also disclosing of progress towards this target is an area where companies are falling behind. And lastly, that companies are not ready for external assurance of their data and the reporting. So those four things are areas where if you feel like, maybe we haven't done this to the level we should have done, you're not alone, but have an extra eye on those. So for some of you, it might feel like CSRD is far away in the future. You might not be in the first reporting wave. But still, we also know that this is an extensive legislation, so it really pays off being ready early. So let's have a short look of the timeline of CSRD to know when we need to be ready for what.
And here we can see that it goes all the way until 2028. But as I said, large companies and companies that have been doing sustainability reporting before need to have a report on CSRD already in January 2025. And that's also something that may sound like it's far ahead in the future, but that actually means that you will be reporting and you need the data and you need the evidence on data from January 2024. And in order to do that, technically you will have had to set up processes and data collection and thought about how you will do this from January 2024 onwards in 2023. The year we're in now. So basically, you need to start improving and setting up the processes today or this year in the coming months to be able to start collecting in January and then to be able to write your report. So really, we're stressing here that you could have started yesterday, but if you're going to start today, how should you do that?
Well, first you need to understand where your gaps are, right?
And how do you do that?
Well, with the gap analysis. So what's a gap analysis then? Well, a gap analysis is a tool and a process that helps you to identify the gaps between where your company is today, your current processes, policies, procedures, and where you need to be in the future to be compliant to CSRD. And a gap analysis can help companies meet CSRD in 4 different ways. So the first one being to identify areas where the organization is not complying today, and then also provide guidance on how to improve in that area. The second part is to align everyone internally on the processes and priorities that you need to do to be reporting ready. Thirdly, addressing data collection and reporting gaps that have been found in the value chain. So CSRD reporting is for sure not a one-person show. It's not a one-company show either. You're going to need to have your stakeholders aligned internally, but you're also going to need to start communicating with for example, your suppliers, companies outside of your own organization, to get to their data that you're going to need for your reporting. And lastly then, since you will most likely find gaps, no matter how well prepared you are, we haven't at least seen a company that was 100% ready. So a gap analysis also helps you to assign tasks and timelines and deliverables that needs to be done to be ready, and to start making better processes and to automate parts of this process where it's possible. So if that's how a gap analysis help, why you should do it is another interesting thing to look at. So why is then a gap analysis important? Well, the CSRD legislation is much more comprehensive, and it requires a higher level of detail of reporting than we probably previously seen. And that's why I said we haven't seen anyone that's 100% ready, because even if you are great at reporting sustainability today, this legislation is new. So there will be new things you need to report on. Secondly, the legislation is evidence-based, which means that you will need to have clear documentation and proof for the data you report, but also for all of the assumptions you have made, the scenarios you have built, how you have identified your risks. So it requires way more documentation than previously. The third part is that if you start too late with identifying your gaps, you're going to find yourself in a bit of a tight situation where you need to close these gaps. We don't have these policies in place. We don't have these processes in place. We haven't looked into how to get this data. You're going to need to close those gaps at the same time as you're going to need to report. And that's going to be really, really tough. So closing those gaps already now is going to help you when it's time to report. And then lastly, aligning your organization. So this is really one of the things that can help, where gap analysis can help. It's not only about identifying your gaps, but also getting all of your stakeholders on board. So reporting involves a network and an ecosystem of people within both your organization and beyond, but also data to find the right information and know what to do with it. And when we have done the gap analysis with our customers, we have found some really, really interesting things. So the first insight that we have found, and we have done this gap analysis with everything from smaller Swedish companies to large multinational companies. We have been talking to their management teams. We've been talking to their board members. We've been talking across the organization. And almost everyone we talk to, no matter what type of organization, no matter where in the organization, they have little to no knowledge about CSRD, except for the sustainability manager or the sustainability team, which is usually starting to get real on top of this. The second insight is that different parts of the organization has completely different views on the company's CSRD readiness. We talked with one person last week, and he was so confident that, our sustainability team is great. They are so on top of this. I feel very confident that this will be no problem for us. Super. Then we interviewed another person in that team, and the meeting invite had the heading CSRD interview. And the first thing he said was, okay, so this, I see here that, the meeting topic is CSRD interview. What's CSRD? And then we felt, okay, so apparently there's quite a discrepancy in this organization about the knowledge and how ready you actually are. Then the third insight is that there is in many organizations a challenge of getting important stakeholders like the financial department to understand their role and contribution. Sometimes we see that there's reluctance, which is also not a surprise. This is a new area, and change within a company usually comes with some reluctance. But it could also be lack of knowledge of what to do and what's expected from them, which is actually our fourth insight, that one very common request in companies is to get more clarity and visibility into the process of reporting, but also what's demanded from me working in finance, or me in operations, or me in HR, or wherever I work. I want to know what's expected from me. And that brings us to the last insight, that aside from stakeholders wanting to know their individual responsibilities, they also ask for more more specific insight on what data do I need to collect. They have understood this is a data challenge, but they also ask for more education. So not only that the sustainability team needs education in terms of knowing CSRD and how to work with it in their organization, but each of these individual stakeholders want to know more. I think that's a really, really positive thing, because that we can provide to our organizations. So when we then know, how a gap analysis can help and why it's important, how can we then do it in the best way possible?
Thanks for those insights. I think it's amazing that companies get so many insights just from doing this gap analysis process. And it's, of course, how we've tailored ours. So we created our gap analysis process that we call the CSRD gap discovery process. And I'm going to go through the steps that we have created around this, that Maria now explained the insights that we got from, which I think are very, very impressive. And so the first step is that we actually do a first readiness meeting with the company. We understand the current company's CSRD status, the needs and queries. The second step is that we do the interviews with key stakeholders across the organization and the board to get various perspectives. And as Maria already mentioned, during that process, and different stakeholders have very different perspectives, and they're all involved. And this is a value in itself, because people will have to collaborate and work across departments for the CSRD reporting. And you need to understand where you need to build awareness and education, for example. But this also means that the assessment is independent of the maturity level. Like Maria said, we have done it with smaller or bigger companies, multinational. It's been digital, so it's been no problem to have it also with stock listed companies that are in different areas, in different matrices, in different places. And if they were mature or not, that is, as a company or as individuals, it doesn't matter, because if you haven't done a CSRD or sustainability reporting before, you will want to know that it's coming quickly and you need to prepare a lot. So acting now with the gap and with involving people and engaging people, that will minimize the risks of not compliance in the future. If you are a more mature company that has done a sustainability reporting and you understand, okay, this is tougher, this is more regular, this is dynamic and so forth, okay, you want to take that advantage. You don't want to lose your leadership position, and it still requires some rework and analysis. The third step is that you actually undergo the gap assessment questionnaire in our tool. So it's an in-tool assessment in the SustainLab platform, where you go through the questionnaires covering the mandatory CSRD modules, so the general, the climate change, and the own workers module in bite-sized chunks. And then as a final step, we have a workshop to present the action plan and to strategize the way forward with the tailored gap discovery action plan to ensure your compliance. So this is why we're really encouraging companies to start there. Knowing is going to give you so much more insights, but the work doesn't stop there, because after the gap analysis, there is all the post-gap work, post-gap analysis. So if we look at an example from the gap from a question. One could be, does your organization have specific policies to ensure fair treatment of and inclusion for people from vulnerable groups? If you say yes, you will have to describe the contents, how you gain insights, how you engage employees. If you don't have a policy in place, it will take several months to create that. But the good thing is that some aspects in this, for example, for this question, you can already automate. So, for example, if you need to have a gender breakdown, you need to know how many people are involved in vulnerable groups as in relation to the total. Those are tables and contents that you really can automate already from the start, and then build your processes and build the insights and the perspectives around that. Another question could be, as the example that I mentioned on scenario analysis, if you have that, then you need to say which scenario did you use, how did you do your calculations, your analysis. If you don't have it, the reporting might ask you, okay, when will you have this in place? And that will require you to do research and to align with stakeholders, because just basically coming publicly and saying, well, we will have it then, will require that alignment. So the outcome of to sum up, the outcome of your gap analysis is to have the gaps and an overview of where are your gaps, obviously, but also an action plan for how to close them. So who, what, how will be involved in which areas and different areas. And this leads me to a strong suggestion that we wanted to make today. And it's that you can continue or you can work in 2 parallel tracks. So in the first track, you do your assessment, and the first track shows that hopefully, even though you haven't done anything, even if you haven't done a sustainability report, you're not hopeless. You have been doing processes, you have HR processes in place, you have your operations. So some things you will have in hand to report, and those are the yes. Those are the areas that you want to improve and refine your processes and start automating from then, because you have it already in place. Whereas the next level would be the gaps. Why I want us to work in 2 tracks is that the first track of what you have, it could be that it was areas that you were doing a lot manually. You had time and resources. So let's say scope 1 and 2 emissions. You were gathering that data manually. You will have to continue doing that, but now you have to report on other areas that you need to work your gaps, for example, and that needs more of your attention, your time and resources. So automating that first track on scope 1 and 2, just as an example, you would say, okay, we need to continue doing this all the time. So we want to set up a process. In parallel, you say, okay, these are the gaps that we have. So we need to align, we need to work, we need to research our policies, etc. And while you're doing that, when you reach the point of now we have the information in place, you can also automate that. But you will have also learned from the first track what worked well for us as an organization in our process, because it can also look different from organization to organization. So it worked that we sent this many reminders for this type of topic. It worked that we had these people in the platform or not. So that's something that you would have already learned if you did both parallel. And that's really where SustainLab is here to help, right, Maria?
Yes, for sure. I mean, your business, the ones of you listening, is to, manage buildings or build cars or, produce medicine or whatever it is. That's your core business. Our core business is to automate data handling. And of course, I'm a bit biased here, but technology can really help you. As Michaela says, you will need to spend so much time on closing these gaps that you want to do this in the most efficient way possible. So how can technology help? Well, technology helps you to handle larger data sets with ease. When it comes to CSRD, we're going to need to handle more data than previously. And that can be very hard for the human eye and the human brain. We had a customer a couple of weeks back who had a 12,000 row Excel of data that they needed to structure, organize, and put calculations on. And doing that manually is really, really hard. But in a platform that's built for data handling, it takes a minute or two. So that's really one way where technology can help. Another part is to ensure data comparability. That the data is clean, it's calculated, and it's compared in the same way. So we know actually that the outcome is something we can trust. And then we have the third point of lessen the administrative burden of data collection. We have one customer who said, I hate December. It's the worst month of the year because then I need to call everyone that has data that I want and I need to nag them to give it to me. I mean, first of all, no one likes that. It's a boring task and your valuable time shouldn't be spent on it. And second of all, you can automate it so easily. Have a platform sending out reminders, ensuring that data gets reported. Just, takes away that administrative crap that actually no one likes to do. And then lastly, ensuring compliance. CSRD requires that you have transparency and traceability of your data. That means that you know where the data comes from, you know what calculations have been made, you know what assumptions have been made, and you know why the outcome is as it is. And that's so much easier to work with if you work in an automated way where technology can help and kind of find those, save those calculations, save those assumptions, and so on. So the benefits are not only then a smoother process, but also that you save your valuable time. We know that time is money. You increase the quality of your reporting and you ensure compliance to the legislation. And last but not least, before we go into the Q&A, how can SustainLab support with CSRD? Well, first of all, as we said, the gap analysis. To kickstart the process, understanding where you have the gaps. It's a very short 5-week process that gives you loads of insights. So that's the first step. The second step is then that we help you close those gaps and we help you establish the processes. We help you doing the double materiality analysis and everything else around CSRD that you need to have. And at the same time, in a parallel track, we can help you to smoothen your data collection and processing process by, of course, onboarding you to a platform that handles all of that manual hassle. So with that, we want to meet you where you are on your CSRD journey, and we want to take you all the way to the end of it.
And please remember, CSRD and complying to it offers also benefits. We know that it can take us to improved sustainability performance, increased transparency, competitive advantage, risk management. So let's also remember that this is a good thing. So yeah, all right, that was it from our side. Will you make it to the CSRD finish line? We really hope so. We hope that you learned something new, and make sure to read the CSRD blog. We will look at some questions. We have a few minutes. If you have any questions that we don't get to, please shoot us an email. Q&A there, thank you. Okay, I'll give this one to you. At which step of the process would you suggest implementing a platform like SustainLab?
Well, good question. I mean, first of all, do the gap analysis. It's quick, it's easy, you get loads of benefits. But then start as early as possible. When you start working with a platform, you're not only going to work with a platform, you're also going to work according to a new process. It takes a bit of time getting everyone on board on that. So starting early with the scope that you know that you have, with the data that you know that you have, and build those processes around it will make it so much faster than to build out, add on to your scope, and as your maturity develops as an organization. So I would say as soon as possible, but start small, don't make it more complex than it is, and then build as you go. Let's see, another one. Maybe this one then for you, Michaela. What do you see as the main benefits of CSRD?
Thanks. I would say I see 3 main benefits. The first one is that it will influence how we do business in Europe. So as we align our strategic and our reporting processes within organizations, but also across sectors. The other benefit is that it requires dynamic and evidence-based approaches. So it requires a lot of cooperation across the value chain. And the third benefit, I would say, is that hopefully it will drive real change, because it's really hard to be at such evidence and processes to just be compliant driven. So those are my 3 hopeful benefits.
I think actually we have a customer in Japan, and I'm doing a webinar with them tomorrow. And Japan is like
Japanese?
Yeah.
In Japanese.
We have a translator. But Japan is like 10 years behind Europe when it comes to sustainability. And that's one of the questions they want to discuss. They're like, we see how fast this is going in Europe. We're envious. How do you get to this? How do we, pick up the speed here in Japan? So I think what you say, that this will drive real business change, is really, really important.
Thank you. We are at the end. In order not to go over, we have the questions that you have posted. We will make sure to get back to you, and also with the CSRD blog and further information. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. We are at time, so all the other questions, as Michaela says, we'll come back to you on email. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you learned something new. Anything we can help with, just reach out, and we're happy to help you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.